In a land where the sun poured golden light over rolling hills and marble palaces, there lived a king whose name carried both reverence and fear. His kingdom was vast, adorned with bustling markets and rivers that gleamed like silver threads weaving through fertile valleys. The people admired his strength, yet whispered quietly of his stubborn pride. He was a man who valued order above all things, for he believed that a single fracture in belief could unravel the fabric of his empire. Despite the crown that weighed heavy on his brow, the king had one joy that softened his heart: his daughter. She was the light within the palace walls, a gentle soul with eyes that seemed to carry questions deeper than the horizon. Her laughter filled corridors lined with gold, and her kindness reached even the most forgotten corners of the kingdom. Servants adored her, scholars marveled at her curiosity, and her father, though stern, could not deny the warmth she brought to his otherwise iron-bound life. In those days, the land seemed at peace. The call of faith was present in quiet whispers. Traders who carried tales of distant lands, travelers who spoke of devotion and prayers rising like songs at dawn. The king dismissed such talk as harmless, for he believed nothing could challenge the unity of his realm. To him, faith was merely a private matter, not a force capable of shaping destiny. Yet, in the silence of her chambers, the young princess often lingered by the carved windows, gazing beyond the palace gardens. She wondered about the voices of prayer she overheard in the market, about the words of mercy and patience that seemed to comfort weary travelers. Something within her stirred, though she could not name it. Little did the king know, the peace he cherished was fragile, for soon a single choice would awaken conflicts that neither crown nor sword could contain.
It began with whispers, rumors that grew like shadows creeping across the walls of the palace. A group of merchants had been discovered gathering in the quiet of dawn, bowing their heads in prayer, unlike the rituals of the kingdom. Their devotion was not to the idols of stone, nor the traditions of the court, but to the one God they called Allah. The news reached the king as he dined with his council, and silence fell heavier than stone. The king's heart stiffened. To him, such devotion was not just belief, it was rebellion. For if people followed a law higher than his throne, would that not weaken the crown itself? His pride, sharpened by years of rule, flared into anger. "Faith that divides is faith that destroys," he declared, his voice echoing across the hall. The council bowed, none daring to question. That very night, the king issued a decree. Islam would be banned in his kingdom. No prayers at dawn, no whispered verses in the market, no gatherings in secret. He believed this law would protect his empire from division, but in truth, it was the first crack in the walls of his reign. The people trembled. Some hid their faith, clutching it silently within their hearts. Others fled the cities, carrying the Qur'an beneath their cloaks. The streets that once rang with songs of trade now grew heavy with silence and fear. From her chamber, the princess listened. Her gentle world began to unravel. The travelers she had once spoken with no longer came. The voices of prayer she secretly admired were now chased away. She saw the sorrow in the eyes of servants, the unease in the market stalls, the quiet grief of those whose faith had been silenced. And though she loved her father, a seed of doubt was planted in her heart, a question she dared not voice. What if the truth he forbade was the very light her soul had been searching for? That question haunted the princess in the stillness of night. While the palace slept beneath jeweled ceilings, she would sit by the window, gazing toward the distant village lights. She remembered the voices of merchants reciting words that felt like rivers flowing through the heart, verses of patience, mercy, and hope. Now silenced, those voices echoed only in her memory, yet they grew louder within her soul. Meanwhile, the king's decree hardened. Patrols roamed the streets, searching for gatherings in shadowed corners. Market inspectors silenced those who whispered of the Qur'an. The throne room resounded with reports of disobedience. And the king, convinced he was preserving unity, only deepened the fear that divided his people. His pride blinded him, though he believed himself righteous. In the palace, his daughter became quieter. Her laughter no longer filled the halls, replaced by thoughtful silence. The king noticed, but only thought it only the maturing of youth. He never guessed that in hidden moments she sought the forbidden words. One evening, disguised in the robes of a servant, she slipped through the market streets, her heart pounding. In a modest home behind shuttered windows, she listened as a weary traveler recited verses of the Qur'an. The words pierced her heart like light through darkness. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, she felt a faith that did not command her by fear, but embraced her with peace. She kept her secret close, guarding it with every heartbeat. Yet secrets have a way of trembling at the edges. The more the king thundered against Islam, the more his daughter yearned for it. Within the palace of marble and gold, she began to carry an invisible treasure, one her father had sworn to banish from his land. And though no one yet knew it, her secret devotion would soon place father and daughter on a path where love, pride, and faith would collide. The moment came sooner than she feared. One morning, the king's guards raided a quiet home in the outskirts of the city. Hidden among the scrolls and simple rugs, they discovered a fragment of parchment written with verses of the Qur'an. The king, enraged, demanded the names of those who dared to defy his decree. Whispers reached the palace. Someone of noble presence, cloaked and veiled, had been seen slipping into that very home days before. The king's fury blazed. To him, it was proof that rebellion was spreading into the heart of his kingdom. He summoned the court, declaring that even those of highest rank would not be spared should they betray his law. His voice thundered through the hall, but in the silence that followed, the princess felt her hands tremble. She knew the shadow described was her own. From that day, every step through the palace felt like walking on glass. Servants glanced at her with quiet unease, as though they sensed the burden she carried. At night, she clutched her secret verses, praying in silence, afraid the walls themselves might betray her. The closer her father pressed down upon his people, the heavier her secret grew within her chest. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the palace walls, the king entered his daughter's chamber. His eyes softened for a moment, but then sharpened with suspicion. "You have grown distant. Tell me, what burdens your heart?" Her lips trembled, her pulse raced. For the first time, the distance between love for her father and loyalty to her newfound faith became unbearable. She wanted to speak the truth, to let the words of peace flow from her lips, but fear chained her silence. The king studied her face, but when she lowered her gaze, he turned away, unaware of how close he had come to uncovering the truth that could shatter his throne.
But truth has a way of finding its voice, even when hidden behind silence. Days later, a drought swept across the land. Rivers thinned, crops withered, and unrest began to stir among the people. The king, desperate to hold his authority, called for sacrifices to the idols of stone. Yet the skies remained empty, and his people's faith in him began to falter. Inside the palace, the princess could no longer keep her secret. She had listened to verses that spoke of a God who hears every prayer, a God who needs no offering of gold or stone. And in the stillness of night, as the kingdom suffered, she knelt by her window and whispered words that had become her lifeline. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. The next morning, clouds gathered. Rain poured over the thirsty fields, filling rivers once more. The people rejoiced, yet rumors spread quietly. Some said the king's idols had failed, and that prayers to the one God had been answered instead. The whispers reached the throne, unsettling the king's pride. Then came the breaking moment. Entering his daughter's chamber unannounced, he found her kneeling, lips moving in soft devotion. In her hands rested a small parchment, the very verses he had sworn to banish. His heart froze. The rebellion he feared was not in the markets nor among the merchants. It had taken root in his own blood. Anger surged, but behind it flickered something unexpected: fear. Not of losing power, but of losing her. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she whispered, "Father, I have found a light that no walls can contain." For the first time, the king felt his certainty falter. He had outlawed faith, yet here it stood before him, not in an enemy, but in the daughter he cherished more than his crown. The throne, the laws, the pride of a lifetime, all seemed to crumble in that single moment. For years, the king had ruled with an iron will, believing that strength came from control. Yet now, faced with his daughter's trembling hands holding words of peace, he felt weaker than he ever had before. Her tears were not rebellion, they were a plea, not for power, but for truth. For the first time, the king did not see Islam as a threat. He saw it as the force that gave his daughter courage, serenity, and hope, even in the face of his wrath. It was not rebellion that shaped her, it was faith. And in her eyes, he glimpsed a freedom his crown had never given him. Silence filled the chamber. The king's heart battled with his pride, but slowly the walls within him began to break. His daughter whispered verses of mercy, and each word felt like rain upon parched soil. He listened, not as a ruler, but as a father, and something within him surrendered. Days later, when the court expected yet another decree of oppression, the king shocked them with words they never imagined. His voice no longer thundered with fear, but trembled with humility. Let no man be forbidden from worship, for faith is not the enemy of unity, it is its foundation. The people wept. The ban was lifted. The kingdom, once divided by silence and fear, began to heal. And though whispers of doubt still lingered, one truth became undeniable. The king himself had changed. In the twilight of his reign, the king often walked with his daughter through the palace gardens, no longer as ruler and heir, but as two souls bound by love and a newfound faith. He had tried to banish light, but in the end, it was light that found him, through the heart of the one he loved most. And thus, the story of the king who banned Islam became the story of the king who discovered it, not by force of sword or decree, but by the quiet faith of his daughter.